Okay. So welcome everybody. Um, what I'd like to do is we're a small group, of course, and what I really want to do is go through the booklet quickly. I know that you've all seen it, but let's go through it, and then as we're going through the booklet, we can ask people if they have their own experiences to share or questions, and then we can that way we're sharing here. We're not just listening. So give me 1 minute. I'm going to share my screen with the booklet here. Okay, can everybody see the booklet here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you've all seen this booklet, right? Those of you who, did you get it in the mail?
Yes.
Members, great. So first, of course, let me thank our 5 sponsors who made this possible. We're definitely grateful to them. That is always great to have them involved. So when I was preparing this program, I interviewed Lawrence Carter-Long, who is, his title is Director of Discourse and Development for DisArt. And DisArt is a organization that uses art to help people with disabilities. It helps them overcome issues they might have and helps them explore their creativity. And we had a great interview. And what he said is what I touched on in introduction here, and that is that creativity is really at the heart of serving any customer, but especially if you come in with a customer who might have some special needs that are not being met by the normal costumes or the normal makeup or whatever you're offering. So that was a key point that Lawrence made in our conversation. And I think it's great to emphasize because when someone comes in and has a request that's a little bit different, you need to be prepared to help them out by being creative. And then, of course, it all starts with a conversation, because you may not know if somebody has a disability or what their disability is. And for sure, you're not going to know what their limitations are or what they want, what they're looking for. Terry, you made a very insightful comment when you and I talked about this. Can you share that about what it is if you know one person with a disability?
Yeah. And for me, it's primarily autism. My son is ASD, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, and attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. And it's because it's different for everyone. You could have a combination of different disorders across the spectrum. You could also have medical issues. You could have other things. So it's important to know that just because you've met that one person who maybe you had a great interaction with, it doesn't mean that every other person is going to have the same disorders and the same issues.
Great. And Terry, can you share with us some maybe good ways to initiate this kind of a conversation? How do you do that? Sometimes I think people might be a little shy or a little intimidated to start a conversation like that.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, asking what someone is looking for, asking, starting that needs-based sales comment, well, how can I help you today? Keep it very open-ended. It doesn't have to be a yes or no answer. Most of the time, it's not going to be. A lot of times it'll be parents or grandparents and they're shopping with someone, and you're not going to be able to tell that most people have a sensory disorder. It doesn't exist. There's not one specific reason. Well, he looks like he's autistic. Not really. Usually my son's hanging around, he hugs and stuff like that. He's an average 12-year-old. He likes Taekwondo, he likes football. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to say, well, he's got this or he's got that. And most of the time you can't. So you need to be able to ask those questions. And if you can't, then that's where, I'm happy to help, give you some ideas what you can do. But yeah, so just those general questions, keeping it open-minded, keeping it open-ended, and talking in general about what the needs are. And when they say things like, well, he doesn't like scratchy stuff. It's too scratchy on his skin. He doesn't like bright colors, loud noises. That's kind of a key that those are some of the things that perhaps they have a sensory disorder like autism.
Great, thank you, Terry. I think a key point that you make there is just asking, right? Just start the conversation. The person who has the disability, or if that person has a caregiver with them, they'll tell you what the deal is if they feel like it's important. Does anybody else on the call today have an experience to share with this point, with starting the conversation?
Ed, I think the key to what Terry said, and for what most of us think, is getting to know your customer. When you go to ask them for help, listen to what they're saying and watch them as they navigate your store. It's not hard to tell. And I think if you have good employees that are willing to think out of the box and reach out to those people, our employees were always very, very helpful. And if they couldn't help, they'd pass it on to another employee who could. And I think that's just the whole key, getting to know that person, listening to them, watching them.
Great, thank you, Pam. And that's true with any customer, right? You want a regular customer, get to know them, take some time to get to know them. Okay. Let's move on then. Physical disabilities maybe are the more obvious disabilities. And there are some issues that can be addressed with costumes. The one thing that came up several times when we were researching this was having available costumes that are loose fitting, that are larger, that can be draped if need be. For example, somebody in a wheelchair might prefer a costume that does not need to be fastened in the same way as another costume. And other types of fasteners might be easier for someone with a physical disability to use. Velcro, for example, might be easier than buttons. Fortunately, and Michael, you can speak to this, a lot of manufacturers these days make XXL and triple XL versions of their costumes. And even if they aren't specifically designed for people with disabilities, costumes of that size can be very helpful because they can fit over things that that people don't want to be tight on. And they can accommodate obviously customers who are large. They need that may be their disability is just their size. So extra large, extra large are valuable types of costumes to stock.
Yeah, we've definitely expanded our selection over that in recent years. But honestly, I've seen even more of a demand to expand it even more. And you're definitely correct there it's become a very big thing. It's become a very requested thing.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Michael, have you observed other things besides larger sizes that might accommodate people with disabilities?
Hello?
Any other characteristics of
Hi, good.
like that?
Well, so the adaptive costumes, we have a big part of that is just the fabric having easier openings and all openings, basically so that they don't have to completely, so it's much easier to get on and off.
Okay, great.
because that is something that's a very big point for anyone with any type of disability. And it doesn't even have to be a physical disability. Sometimes it's even just the fabrics. So
Mhm,
it's typically a looser fitting fabric as a whole.
great. Thank you.
Okay.
Another issue that has come up a couple times in conversations is people in wheelchairs might want to incorporate the chair itself in their costume. Um, and that can be done a lot of ways. I mean, you see some already kits that can adapt a wheelchair to make it look like a Batmobile or a carriage or something like that. But even if those don't exist, you can, if you have a stock of cosplay supplies or thin sheets or poster board and things like that, those could be used to decorate a chair. Or of course, even regular decorations that you might use at a party, depending on what the person wants, could be used to decorate a chair.
Yeah, and that's something I've definitely seen used a lot at some of the comic conventions and all. People really like to build those on their own, but that is something that we unfortunately don't have yet. But I do think it's something that would be very, very versatile and very useful.
Great. Has anyone else on the call seen an interesting example of a wheelchair that has been designed to look like something different that they'd like to share? Pam?
We had a customer who was coming in our store since he was 6. He now teaches at West Virginia University. But his mother and he loved Halloween, and so he would always have some type of exciting costume he wanted to concoct with his wheelchair. And if I can find the picture, I'll send it to you, Ed, for the e-contact. But
Okay.
he even used to lead our zombie walk because he loved zombies. So
Hmm.
in his wheelchair, he would decorate it, and I can't remember exactly how he did it, but the whole thing was dead looking, and he was all dead looking, and he would lead the parade down the street. So some parents are super creative and are willing to work with their children. Others have no idea. It's just a new concept for them. And so that's where you have to have those ideas.
Great.
I have a
Great.
question for Michael, though. What types of fabric is Ruby's looking into for these types of costumes?
Let me actually pull up. I had a whole thing on what it was. I should have had it open while we're on the call here, and unfortunately I don't at the moment.
While Michael's doing that, let me make a little comment on something that Pam said. When I was interviewing that gentleman from the DisArch organization, he made the very good point that Halloween is a time like everyone, people with disabilities like to show off and like to be someone or someone different, perhaps. And Pam, I think that example you made of the person in a wheelchair leading the parade is a great example. I mean, in that instance, him being in a wheelchair made no difference at all in his abilities, and he was able to be the leader of a parade during Halloween because he was creative. And I think that that's something to remember is that people with disabilities want to do the same things at Halloween that anybody wants to do. They want to show off and be somebody perhaps a little different than who they are. And the zombie concept is can be carried out no matter what your disability, presumably. So, Michael, do you want to share about the fabrics yet, or you want me to keep going?
I'm actually, unfortunately, I'm having a little issue finding the exact fabrics on here. I mean, the one thing I am finding for the ones that are more specific towards wheelchair and all, it's actually saying that they keep the bottom part free of fabric so that you don't have to worry about pressure points and all. I will have to, I mean, maybe that's something I can send after the call as far as figuring out the specific fabrics actually of the costume itself. I unfortunately, I thought that was on what I had here and it is not.
Sure, no problem, Michael. Thank you. If you want to bring it up later in the call, by all means do. Otherwise, yeah, send me an email with it later and we'll share it with the attendees.
Thank
So
you.
let's go on. The sensitivity issues is something that Terry touched on. If you have a customer who is autistic or has some other type of sensitivity issue, obviously having a good supply of fabric is very important. Different types of fabric. Terry, can you share what fabrics are ideal for people with sensitivity issues?
Usually softer fabrics that stretch a little bit. Also, not just the fabrics themselves, but easy access. So if they tend to have trouble with going to the restroom or are having difficulty with different types of things, then maybe a quicker zipper as opposed to buttons, things like that can make a big difference.
Great. And Terry, do you?
My son usually will wear most things, but if it's too scratchy, like even a pair of jeans, he just won't wear them.
And Terry, in terms of costume fabric, do you find it
Okay.
easy to find these costumes that have comfortable fabric, or is that unusual to find?
No, he usually starts rummaging through our stock pretty early to make sure they find something that he wants,
Okay.
because he has to try it on and he has to walk around in it and he has to play in it for a few minutes just to make sure. So, you know, he's a lucky kid. he can look whatever he wants, but I mean, it's just a lot of patience and a lot of, we have to really work with him and make sure that it's something they're comfortable in, especially if he's wearing it to a party or to a school event or taekwondo or something. So
Great.
Ed,
I want to welcome Pat from Ruby's. Pat, thanks for joining us this morning. Glad you could be here. And Pat, I wanted to tell you that we're kind of an open meeting here. It's informal. If you want to contribute something, please do. Don't think that you need to hold back.
Ed,
Yes.
with the same issue of sensitivity, it doesn't just reach out to Halloween. I don't know if Dwayne's had this experience, but with theater, sometimes you get autistic children or just children that are sensitive to things and the director doesn't bother to tell you. And it's always an issue with students that possibly don't want to wear prosthetics. We've come into play with that with a kid that was Shrek in a huge play and no one bothered to tell us he was autistic. And we take all these prosthetics with us and he's hysterical. He won't let us touch him. So you have to be willing to adapt with theater too, as far as scratchy things and things that are too tight and too consuming for them. They want a quick escape.
Great point. And Pam, in the case of this theater student, what did you do? How did you accommodate the Shrek costume for him?
Well, he was a very large boy and he was perfect Shrek, but he didn't want to wear anything, including a nose that went around his ears. So all we did is give him a headband with ears and made up his face. Well, let his mother make up his face because he didn't want anyone touching him. But he was an amazing actor. We just had to find what worked for him.
Great. That brings up another point, Pam. In the booklet on page 7 there, you can see someone raised the idea of that some people with sensitivity issues don't want something touching their face, like this person sounds like, Pam, that you're describing. And the idea was that you can take a mask or take a stick and attach it to the mask if this costume has a mask. And that way the individual can put the mask up to his or her face and just hold it there as a mask instead of having it strapped onto their face. And that way they get the same effect without having something tight against their face. So that's a good idea.
Well, I think if you don't ever have any experience with children or adult actors that have issues, it's kind of like puzzling as to what to do for them. And but it's challenging and fun at the same time too.
Mhm. Mhm. Great. Does anyone else on the call have any examples of sensitivity issues and how they address them with their customers? Okay. So obviously there are many other disabilities, and going back to the very beginning, creativity is the key. Um, for example, if you have customers with hearing disabilities, you, they may need a costume that allows them to have their hands available and their face available so that they can read lips or use sign language. Also, customers who have allergies may be very it may be important for them to have costumes that have no latex in them. That's a serious allergy. In which case, it's just important to know what your components of your costumes are as well as you can, so that you can steer customers away from costumes that might affect them. And when we were working on this booklet, I also spoke with a mom who has children with serious food allergies. And she had a couple things to say that were kind of interesting. One was that in her case, a costume with gloves was good because if kids were taking food from the trick or treat house, she knew that if they had gloves on, at least it wasn't touching their hands. But she also said that she tried to avoid costumes with masks for her child with a strong allergy because she found that he would try to sneak candy behind her back and not without her seeing. And with the mask on, he could do that. So she was very careful about that. So not much you could do as a costume shop owner in that regard, but it's just something to think about. And she also mentioned the autoepinephrine injector, that if a child is old enough to be able to carry their own injector, that a costume with a pocket for that is a good idea. You may need to add that. Before we go on to the collaboration part of this booklet, does anyone else have any other stories or examples they'd like to share of people with disabilities and how they accommodated them? Okay. So this last section of the booklet, this also came up in my conversation with the gentleman from the DisArt organization. And he pointed out that one really great way to start a program in your shop is to collaborate with organizations in your community that are already working with people with disabilities. And he made the comment to me that there are generally local chapters or local groups for every type of disability. So you might find people who have family members with autism or some physical disabilities or something. And if you can connect with those organizations, at the very least, just to tell them that your shop can accommodate people with those disabilities, that's great. But even better, he said, is if you could work out some kind of a workshop or some kind of event where the members of that disability community could come to your shop, try on costumes, see what you have to offer, etc. That signals to the community that you are welcoming individuals with disabilities, and of course, these individuals are potential customers. So having them come into your store probably maybe will turn them into a customer. So that kind of collaboration is an idea that this guy mentioned to me, and I think is a great one. And then another great thing he said was that the promotional opportunities about this are really outstanding. Obviously, if you don't let people know that you have this, that you're open to helping people with disabilities, that they won't come to your store. So you need to let them know. One way is, of course, that round sticker that we sent out to all the members. I hope that you who are on the call, who are members, if you will put those stickers in your window, at least that lets people know in that way that you are open to them. But also, of course, put it on your social media, etc. And one idea that this guy had was that you should invite your customers through social media to share their own examples of costume hacks that worked well for people with disabilities. Because people love to share photos of themselves, especially creative things. So if they have already created a fun costume for somebody in a wheelchair or someone who uses crutches or something, inviting them to share that by using your hashtag is a great way to spread the word and get a lot more traffic to your social media and letting people know what's going on. And lastly, he made the key point that local TV stations and newspapers would find a story like that very appealing. There's so much bad news in the world that when they can find a local business that is helping people with disabilities and or collaborating with disability organizations during Halloween, which is already kind of a fun season, he said that that's the kind of news that TV stations would eat up, local TV stations or local news organizations or news websites. And if you've ever tried to submit a story before, you probably know that almost every news organization these days has an online story idea submission page. Very easy. You can just cut and paste your ideas, send them out, get them out there quickly, and that might generate some great publicity for your store and a very interesting story for the community. Does anyone on the call have any examples or experience with doing those things, collaborating or promoting an idea like this? Pam? Pam, we can't hear you. Can you turn on your mic?
Okay, sorry. When this young man, Alex, started coming in at the age of 6, and he was just one of my customers, it always seemed like the local TV station showed up.
Wow.
And so from there on, every time they were going to come, they would call and say, is Alex going to be there? So
Wow.
I'd have to let his mother know, and he would come, and he was quite the star. And it went on until he was too old to do it. But I think the important thing is, if your store has the capability of catering to customers, period, that's going to get around. People are going to know that you're going to do anything you can to help them. These 30-day wonders are not going to do that. My husband and I have been making our rounds of Halloween stores because we were the last one in West Virginia to close, and as far as individual stores, and they don't even say hello to you. So for you to jump on this campaign is even better because it gives you such an advantage.
Indeed. Thanks, Pam. That's a great point. And I think maybe that's a point about that all NCA members are aware of or need to be aware of, that that kind of personalized service that they can offer is clearly what sets them apart. Thank you. All right. Any other comments on this topic? That was the last section of the booklet. All right, great. Well, thank you everybody who joined us today. And thank you again to our sponsors who made this possible. And I hope that you will all embrace the Halloween for All concept this year because it's a worthwhile effort. So thank you, everybody. This event has been recorded, so you can watch it later or have someone else that you know watch it who wasn't there with us today. But that ends our meeting today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.